Hello, everybody. So now I'm going to look at the Australia's World Test Championship. Now we're playing against South Africa, and it's again in England. Now it's a neutral venue. Probably doesn't really advantage either team. England is always very fair. I believe it's at Lords. Um, might be wrong, but anyway. South Africa tend to do pretty well in England, and so do Australia. Probably South Africa do a little bit better in England than Australia because South Africa tend to travel a bit better, so it is probably a slight advantage to South Africa. Now, we probably know quite a lot about how South Africa didn't really play that many tests and played against some pretty weak oppositions to get there, while Australia had much tougher opponents. So Australia should be at an advantage, but Australia also have a less solid team. So South Africa really do know what their team is quite well. There's not really going to be much dispute about it other than with injuries, and they know who their backups are in which order. So have a few problems, particularly in the batting at the moment. Now we also have the issue of Josh Hazlewood, whether he's going to be fit in time. If not, we might go for Scott Boland, but Scott Boland has a terrible record overseas, so it might be a bit of a risk. That's going to be the main issue as far as injuries are concerned. So otherwise, I'm expecting for the four bowlers that Australia used to be Pat Cummins, Mitchell Starc, Josh Hazlewood, and Nathan Lyon. Now again, Josh Hazlewood, if he is injured, I expect Scott Bowler to come in. There are other options. Australia has quite a lot of fast bowling backup, but those are the four that I'm expecting. I know that Matthew Kuhnemann had a good series in Sri Lanka until he got reported for illegal bowling, which was actually apparently completely fine. It was assessed as fine pretty much straight away. So there is a chance that Kuhnemann comes in. I'm actually not sure if Kuhnemann or Todd Murphy is the better bowler. Todd Murphy certainly is domestically, and the overall Test record does favour Murphy, but Kuhnemann did have that good result in Sri Lanka, so it is a bit tough to decide between those two. But I'm not expecting a second spinner to play. I've also heard that Murphy is very similar to Lyon, so they're probably unlikely to play both in the same team. Although Murphy probably will replace Lyon once Lyon's not playing anymore. Nonetheless, I expect those to be the four bowlers. I know there's some talk about Josh Inglis potentially replacing Alex Carey. Carey has had an amazing last 12 months and has probably been the form wicketkeeper of any team in the world in the last 12 months, and I'm not expecting Josh Inglis to replace him. Now, that therefore leaves us with our six um, batsmen. Now, a few of these are not really in serious dispute, and I'm just going to go over them firstly in order of most likely to play, assuming that they're not injured. So the most likely to play is Steve Smith, closely followed by Travis Head. I'm not going to talk too much about them because they're just going to play. The third one is Usman Khawaja, and I know a lot of people have criticised him, but we do need openers. He's an opener, and he just got a double century, so he's going to play. And so those three are in, and now then we have three issues that we're not sure about. Now, at the moment, we have an all rounder in Bo Webster. Now, he's done quite well, but the issue for him is that Cameron Green's coming back in time for the World Test Championship, but he's unlikely to be bowling. Now, do we play Cameron Green in as purely a batsman? That's the first question. The second question is that, as at the last test, we had Josh Inglis playing, and we had Marnus Labuschagne. Now, Josh Inglis played essentially to replace Sam Constas. Now, Sam Constas is a regular opener. We're unlikely to play Travis Head as an opener. It didn't really work in Sri Lanka, and Head doesn't want to open. And so I don't expect that Head will be opening, and that means that effectively Inglis can't play unless he's playing in place of Marnus Labuschagne. Now, Labuschagne has been out of form, so there is a way to argue that Inglis will play in his place, but it will be essentially a choice of Inglis versus Labuschagne. I'm not thinking that there's really any serious other contenders. I know that Nathan McSweeney said he can play. He did really badly in tests, so I'm not expecting that to happen. Now, the other one is, do we play Sam Constas? Now, he had that great opening test, and then he had two middling scores. And I'm saying middling because in a low scoring contest, they weren't failures. they were middling. Now, Ricky Ponting complained that he should have converted his 20s into centuries, and that's legitimate. But he also looked really good, and he's done a lot of things really good in all formats since that time, during that time, before that time. And I think at the moment, Constance is doing really well. Now, the other option is Cooper Connolly. Now, I feel that he failed abysmally in his Test debut, and he also played in the Champions Trophy semi-final, and I felt that he failed abysmally. Well, his bowling was all right, but his batting, he got 0 off 9, and I don't see Cooper Connolly as a legitimate contender, so I'm ruling him out. So for the opening slot, it's essentially a choice of Sam. So we got three locks, by the way. So we've got Usman Khawaja, Travis Head, Steve Smith. They're not in issue. Now the three others is one opener who could be Travis Head, but I don't think that's likely. Um, and we have one middle order player, which is probably going to be either Josh Inglis or Marnus Labuschagne, and then we have one all rounder, which is probably going to be out of Bo Webster or Cameron Green. Now, there's also Aaron Hardy to be considered, but since he is yet to make his Test debut, I think that a World Test Championship would be very risky for him. I don't see Aaron Hardy as a bad option. He's done very well in the Champions Trophy, has a good record, first class domestic, is doing pretty much everything right. Although he does have days where he's good batting and days where he's good bowling, and he doesn't seem to be able to do them both at the same day. But that might change in time. I don't really see Hardy as above Green at the moment. Do I see Hardy as above Bo Webster? They're very close. But the fact that Webster is in the team probably gives him the edge. So I'm going to start with that one. And I'm going to say for the all-rounder spot, I think that Cameron Green's batting is probably slightly ahead of Webster's, and his bowling's probably quite a lot ahead of Webster's. And overall, there's quite a big difference. And I think if they were both in form and fully fit, I would put Green in ahead of Webster every day of the week. However, Green is returning from injury and he won't be able to bowl. Now, the question is, do we want to just say that purely batsman Webster's not going to bowl either? Or are we going to say that Webster's going to bowl at least 10 overs per innings and at bare minimum is going to give the other fast bowlers a break? Now, the thing is, even if Webster doesn't take any wickets, we know what Mitchell Stark is like without a break. He's a bowler that comes in short bursts. Without a break, he struggles, and he is half the player. Yes, he'll be good for 4 overs at the start, maybe even 10. Then he'll fall and he won't come back. You need that little break. Otherwise, we have what happened in Brisbane, and it's just not going to work. So a player like Webster will make Stark better than he was. We also know that Josh Hazlewood, if he's playing, cannot bowl long overs, and he needs a break as well. And even Pat Cummins, he's better now at bowling long spells. He's going to benefit from that. Now, if we have Scott Boland in there, he can bowl all day. But even if Boland is bowling all day, we still need that extra bowling option. And so for me, unless Green is bowling at his peak, he's not playing. And that's the only option for me is that Webster's playing. If if Green is fully fit, he's playing. If not, Webster is. And this is a simple thing. And in fact, I really think that because Webster did have a good start to his career, and maybe he's not that good, maybe he'll falter later. But while he's still going well, I'd put Webster in even if Green is fully fit. So Green's out of the option for me. Then we have the Labuschagne versus Inglis issue. Now, I do love Labuschagne. He came good in that Ashes, how many years ago it was, as a concussion substitute for Steve Smith. He also had a good little series in South Africa as a bowler. He does really well. He tries his hardest. Some people call him, cricket tragic, and he really does everything he can. But we can't deny that his success has failed in the last couple of years. He's dropped from averaging in the 60s. I think he's now below 50. And while that's still not terrible overall, and I don't think this is the end of his career, I think we have to acknowledge that he has been getting worse and worse. However, countering that, we do know his experience. And in a match like a World Test Championship final, we have to acknowledge that. Josh Inglis is a wicketkeeper. He's not a batsman. Yes, he's a wicketkeeper who has improved his batting, and he also his wicketkeeping probably isn't at the standard of Alex Carey's. But I mean, he's already the regular one-day international wicketkeeper and T20 wicketkeeper. It's only a matter of time before he becomes the Test wicketkeeper. But if you were comparing them in pure batting skill, you're always going to put Labuschagne first. And this is the problem for English. Yes, he had a great debut century, but it was in easy conditions, and he came in, and I think it was a 3 for 400 or something. And I mean, you can't get much easier than that. The Sri Lankans weren't even trying, and yeah, and then he got a duck. And okay, he had a back spasm and injury and stuff, but you've got to say Inglis would be a risk. He's inexperienced. He's not really a proper batsman. It would be a big risk for a World Test Championship final. That's not to say that Inglis can't come in as a batsman later, but I think it's a risk. So I would be playing Labuschagne. Now the third option is for the opener. Now I know in Sri Lanka we had Travis Head opening. He doesn't like to open. He had some success, but I think if you consider the sort of runs that other players were getting and how many runs he might have scored in the middle order, and also his attitude, he doesn't like to open. You have to say that in comparison to that, it was a bad idea to move him to the top. Now, if we consider Sam Constas when he opened, he did really well. Now, again, we're saying, okay, scoring wise, you're saying, okay, maybe it wasn't great, but it was 3 times better than Nathan McSweeney. He looked amazing, and and that's important. It's not like he's got straight ducks. He's done actually really well, and I guess the issue for Constas is that we have had that disconnect that we dropped him for the Sri Lankan series after having 3 pretty good tests. He had 2 tests where he was dumped. So bringing him back would be some kind of a risk. But who's the alternative? The alternative is Travis Head moving up, and then you might play Labuschagne and Inglis, or you could move Inglis into open. But I see those as bigger risks than playing Constas. But maybe it's not a bigger risk. It's a difficult decision, and I think there is an argument to open with Inglis, or you could open with Head and put Inglis in at number 4. But it, I do prefer to play Constas, and you might say, well, that's just me being biased. I like the guy, but I also like to have an opener opening when we can. And I know if we didn't have a good opener, I might be open to the idea of having Inglis open. And I think Inglis is really, I mean, other than Smith who wanted to open, I think that Inglis is really the only one who can open out of that lot. Um, and I mean, you could have Carey, I suppose. And I suppose you could have a lot of people, but um, I think you'd have to put Inglis. If Constas isn't opening, Inglis plays. If Constas is opening, well, he plays. So for me, I prefer Constas, but I would have Inglis as the second option. And I'd also have Inglis. I'd have Inglis basically as 12th man. I'd have him as cover for both Labuschagne and Constas, and potentially even Carey as well. So he's my 12th man. And I'm also going to have Scott Boland on the tour. He's probably my 13th man in case Josh Hazlewood isn't ready. And I think that's it. Don't really see any major value in playing more than 13. Um, I, I mean, you could put Cooper Connolly on the squad. You could perhaps take Matthew Kuhneman if you felt like it. Maybe you could take another fast bowler even, but I don't know who. Jai Richardson, maybe. I mean, he's a great bowler. Jai Richardson's amazing, but he keeps breaking down. But uh, yeah, I don't know. But as for whether Australia's going to win, I think I've said before that I think that South Africa played better in England compared to Australia. I think that in terms of the advantage that they gained, South Africa generally played better away than at home. Australia, like most countries, tend to play better at home than away, but not by a big margin. Australia are fairly good at travelling, and England doesn't reduce, like it doesn't drop off that much going to England. I mean, if Australia goes to India, for example, it drops off a lot. So um, I think that if you look at that from that point of view, South Africa are at an advantage. If you look at team stability, South Africa are at an advantage. If you look at ability to beat other teams, I think Australia are at an advantage. The issue for me, and I think what will be one of the major deciding factors, is just how good Australia's team is and whether we get the right team. So I feel like if we play, let's say we have Travis Head opening, we throw Josh Inglis in, we drop Marnus Labuschagne, we play Cameron Green purely as a batsman, and We give Josh Hazelwood a go, and then he breaks down after 2 overs. I think that'll be a big problem for Australia, and I think Australia doesn't have enough backup to be really able to cope with those sort of mistakes. I mean, let's say we play Cooper Connolly instead of Marnus Lavashage. I think such a situation would probably give South Africa the edge. But I think that if Australia do play the best team and it works out to be the best choice, I think it will be probably slight advantage to Australia. Not a big advantage because South Africa still do have a very good team that plays well away and will play well in England. And they've got a very stable team and a lot of really good fast bowlers. I'm seeing this as quite a close contest. I think it'll be a lot closer than Australia against India in the last World Test Championship. Um, and I know, yes, South Africa have had easy matches compared to Australia, but we've also seen that they've won like I think it's 7 tests in a row. Somebody said, and it's not a bad team. It's a very cohesive team, and that's South Africa. So I do see it'd be very much a fast bowler bowl off. They both have very fast bowler really is their strength. There's a lot of weaknesses in both sides batting, and I think in a lot of ways it's a very similar team. The main difference to me, where I think South Africa has the advantage, is in the stability. But I also think that Australia has an advantage in the stability of the bowling lineup. It's the same four bowlers that they've played 10 years or so now. So that will be an advantage in the bowling in terms of expectation and consistency. But I think South Africa will have the advantage in the batting in terms of the consistency in their batting. So this overall leads to a very close series and or match, it's just a single match. Um, and I think it will ultimately get down to if Australia pick the right team. If Australia pick the right team, I think Australia should win. But it still might not. There's still a chance for South Africa. And equally, I think that if Australia get the wrong team, particularly if it's a dreadful decision and it's just, you know, like playing Josh Hazelwood who breaks his breaks down after 3 overs sort of thing, I think that South Africa would have a big advantage. But it doesn't mean that Australia can't win with the wrong team. Even if we play a Cooper Connolly getting out for 0 off 9 balls and not bowling, even if we play Nathan McSweeney, we're still a chance. But it's, I think it's always important to get the right team for every team. It's really important to get that selection right. And, you know, so for me, I think this is really important. And I think we've had a lot of problems and a lot of mistakes with our teams of late. So I really do hope we get the team right. And for me, that means Cameron Green's not playing unless he's bowling. And for me, that means Sam Constant is opening. And I really do think Labuschagne is the safer option against Josh Inglis. And even though, look, I do think there's a good rationale for playing Inglis. And the fourth option, do we play Josh Hazelwood or do we play Scott Boland? I think there's any doubt about Hazelwood's fitness. Boland is playing, as I'd rather a fit player than the best player. But if Hazelwood is 110%, well, 100% fit, and there's no question, no doubt that he'll break down at any time in the 5 day period, he's playing. Boland's record overseas is not as good as it is in Australia, nowhere near as good. Although I'm still preferring Boland. I'm sorry, I'm just too nervous about Hazelwood breaking down. I play Boland, um, and I think he can step up for the World Test Championship, and I think he deserves the spot. I'm not sure that Hazelwood does. So I love Hazelwood, but the injury does worry me. Um, and yeah, I'm not very worried about Sam Constance. Not really. I'm a lot more worried about Cooper Connolly and certainly Nathan McSweeney. Oh my God, if they put Nathan McSweeney in the team, I'm going to scream. If they don't play Constance, I can understand it. I think there's merit to playing English, but I do think oof, English versus Constance. English did do better, but it was in easy conditions. He didn't have to face Fulmer, and he didn't beat Fulmer. Do you say, oh, a century is a century? I don't think a century is a century. I think it depends on the conditions. And English, look, he's done a lot right. And he did well in the Champions Trophy too. Won that game against England, and got us to the semi-finals. So, he's doing a lot right. Constance is doing a lot right. Which one's doing more right? And which one's doing less wrong? I think overall you'd probably say English is doing more right and less wrong. but I'm still preferring Constas. So, uh, and I think by the same argument, you could put a good argument to put Inglis in ahead of Labuschagne. I am tempted to put Inglis in ahead of Labuschagne, to be honest. Um, but it's just that experience. I think in this match, in the World Test Championship, I'm going to prefer experience. And having that level head of Marnus Labuschagne, who you know is going to just fight like crazy to do the right thing. I think having him in the World Test Championship, it might win us something that we would have lost. I think under pressure, Inglis could be exploited. You know, pressure of a World Test Championship final, he might just crave under pressure. And then again, so could Constas. Oh, yeah. I mean, I don't know. It's two out of those three. Out of Labuschagne, Inglis, and Constas. I mean, there's an argument for any one of them to drop out and the other two to play. It, am I going with Constas and Labuschagne? Is that the safer option? Or is it safer to go with Constas and Inglis? Or is it safer to go with Labuschagne and Inglis and drop Constas? I think that's unfair. That's the most unfair option to drop Constas. But is it more unfair to drop Labuschagne or Inglis? That's a really tough one. Those three is tough. I'm going with Constas and Labuschagne. Sorry, Inglis. Um, yeah, he's my 12th man. I might even make the decision in the morning as to which of those three misses out. The other two are playing. Um, yeah, that's going to be really tough. And yeah, I'll yeah, that's it. That's the tough one. The other tough one really is Boland versus Hazelwood, and that's a fitness thing. But I am leaning heavily towards Boland. I don't really see it as much of an issue. Webster versus Green. Webster's playing for me. Um, yeah, that's pretty much it. Anyway, that's all my thoughts on those. Let me know what you think. Bye bye.